Right, Mike? Quick exercise. Don't prepare, don't rehearse, just answer. Ready?
That opening never ends well for me. Every time you say just answer, I end up regretting something.
Ready?
No.
Tell me about yourself.
I'm Mike. I do this podcast, and I have opinions about tea. Strong opinions.
That's your answer? Tea opinions?
I panic, Sarah. You put me on the spot. My entire life flashed before my eyes, and apparently the only thing my brain kept was tea.
And that is exactly why we're doing this episode, because tell me about yourself might be the most deceptively simple question in the English language. It sounds effortless, 6 little words. And then someone actually asks it, and your brain shuts down, packs its bags, and goes on vacation.
Without leaving a note.
Welcome back to the English Conversation Podcast, your cozy corner of the internet for real English conversations. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Mike. And we are genuinely glad you're here today, because this is one of those episodes that sounds basic on the surface, but is actually one of the most practical things we've ever done.
Today, we're talking about how to talk about yourself in English. Not in the textbook way, not in the job interview robot way. In the real, human, natural way that makes people actually want to keep talking to you.
And here's what we'll cover. By the end of this episode, you'll know how to introduce yourself without sounding stiff, how to tell your personal story without turning it into a Wikipedia entry, how to describe your personality in a way that actually sounds like you, how to talk about the things you love with real feeling, and how to share your goals without feeling exposed.
This is a B2 to early cone conversation. The language will be rich and natural, but we'll explain everything as we go. Nothing gets left behind.
And stay with us all the way through, because after the main conversation, we have a full practical phrase section. Real sentences you can borrow, reshape, and use this week.
And after that, our word tour, where we slow down, repeat the most useful vocabulary from today, and show you exactly how to use each one. Before we start, the PDF for today's episode has the full transcript, every phrase from the phrase section, and a self-introduction builder you can fill in yourself. Link in the description, completely free.
And here's your comment prompt. Write one sentence about yourself in the comments. Just one. Not perfect, just honest. We read every single one.
So, why is this question so difficult? You know yourself. You've been yourself for your entire life. You are the leading authority on the subject of you.
And yet the moment someone asks, it's like being asked to summarize the ocean in 2 sentences.
I think a big part of it is that there's no obvious starting point. Do you start with your job, your nationality, your childhood, the fact that you once accidentally joined a book club and stayed for 3 years because you were too polite to leave?
That's oddly specific.
It happened to someone I know.
It happened to you.
Moving on. The point is, the question feels limitless. And when something feels limitless, the brain doesn't know where to begin. So it just stalls.
There's also something deeper. A lot of people feel exposed when they talk about themselves. Vulnerable almost, like they're being evaluated. And that creates a kind of inner tension. You want to sound interesting but not arrogant, honest but not boring, relaxed but not careless.
And for English learners, there's another layer on top of all that. You're not just thinking about what to say. You're thinking about how to say it in a language that isn't your first. That's 2 separate tasks running at the same time, and your brain is doing both while also trying not to look nervous.
Which is a lot.
It's a lot. So, the first thing we want to say today is this. That tight, slightly panicky feeling when someone asks you to describe yourself, it's not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's universal. Even people who do this professionally, interviewers, presenters, coaches, feel it sometimes.
And the second thing is, Talking about yourself naturally is a skill, not a talent, a skill, which means you can practice it, get more comfortable with it, and eventually make it feel like second nature.
And that's exactly what we're going to do today, step by step. Let's start with the very first moment. You meet someone new. The classic question arrives. What do you actually say?
Well, the textbook version goes something like, "Hello, my name is Mike. I am 34 years old. I live in Edinburgh. I am a podcast host." And then everyone in the room dies of boredom.
It sounds like you're filling out a customs form at the airport.
It does. And the problem isn't the information. The problem is it gives the other person absolutely nothing to respond to. No personality, no warmth, nothing to grab onto.
A good introduction isn't a data transfer. It's an invitation. You're opening a door and saying, "Here's something about me. Now let's talk."
So instead of that customs form version, you might say something like, "I'm Mike. I'm based in Scotland," which always surprises people because apparently I don't sound Scottish at all. And then you smile, and now the other person has something, "Oh, where are you originally from?" And the conversation is already moving.
Exactly. One small detail that invites curiosity. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be, "I once rescued a penguin." It just has to be human.
Have you rescued a penguin?
Not yet. But here's mine. I'm Sarah. I grew up in a coastal town and somehow ended up living in 4 different countries, which means I'm very good at packing but terrible at keeping indoor plants alive.
And immediately I want to know, which 4 countries? Why do the plants die? What happened to the last one?
It was a fern. We don't talk about the fern.
So the shape of a natural introduction is your name, one thing about your current life or background, and one small, honest detail that gives the conversation somewhere to go.
And the goal isn't to impress. The goal is to create a connection. You want the other person to think, "I want to hear more from this person," not, "I need to escape this conversation."
And this is really about what people call a first impression. That initial feeling someone gets about you in the first few seconds. It happens fast, often before you've even finished your second sentence.
But the good news is, a first impression doesn't need to be brilliant. It just needs to be warm. Genuine warmth beats rehearsed perfection every time. So you've introduced yourself. The conversation is flowing. And then someone says, "So what's your story? Where did you come from?"
Another enormous question.
It is. And your background in conversation means the collection of experiences that shaped you. Where you grew up, what you studied, where you've lived, what kind of work you've done. It's the journey that brought you to this exact moment.
Your origin story, like a superhero, but with more student debt.
Hopefully. And the mistake most people make is turning their background into a list. I'm from Brazil. I studied law. I worked in Sao Paulo. I moved to London. That's a timeline, not a story.
And timelines are boring. Nobody wants a timeline. They want a person.
Right. So the same information told as a story sounds like this. I grew up in Brazil in a tiny town about 3 hours from the coast. I studied law, which made my parents very happy and me very confused. I ended up in London a few years ago, mostly because I wanted to try something completely different. And honestly, I think the confusion was the best thing that happened to me.
That's the same facts, but it has texture. It has feeling. I can see a person behind those sentences.
And notice the small phrases that carry personality, which made my parents very happy and me very confused. I ended up in London. Honestly. These little additions are what turn information into conversation.
Let's talk about some of those phrases. "I grew up in" is one of the most natural ways to talk about your childhood. Not "I was born in." That's a birth certificate. "I grew up in" has warmth.
I ended up is another one I love. because it suggests that life took you somewhere that wasn't part of the original plan. I ended up in teaching. I ended up in Madrid. It's honest. It says, I didn't have it all mapped out, and that's okay.
You can also say these days for your current situation. These days, I'm working in design. These days, I'm based in Istanbul. It sounds relaxed and present tense.
And here's a tip that makes any background sound more interesting. Connect the past to the present. Show the link. For example, I trained as a chef, but these days I'm actually in food photography. There's more overlap than you'd think.
And now I want to know, what's the overlap? Tell me more. That's the sign of a good background story. Every sentence opens a small door.
Exactly. Tell your story like a human being having a conversation, not like a LinkedIn profile having a crisis.
Okay, personality. This is the one that makes people uncomfortable.
Because describing yourself as a person feels like walking through a minefield. Say too much and you sound vain. Say too little and you disappear. And somehow everyone defaults to the same 3 answers.
Let me guess. I'm a hard worker, I'm friendly, I'm a team player.
Those words have been used so many times, they've been emptied of all meaning. They're like a chair that's been sat in by 10 million people. The shape is gone.
So how do you describe who you are in a way that actually sounds like you?
You show it instead of just labeling it. Instead of saying, I'm creative, you give a tiny moment that proves it. Instead of saying, I'm introverted, you describe what that actually looks like in your life.
So instead of, I'm an organized person, you might say, I'm the kind of person who color codes their calendar and genuinely enjoys it, which probably tells you everything you need to know about me.
And now I can see you. I know something real about you. That single sentence told me more than I'm organized ever could.
Or instead of saying, I'm shy, you could say, I tend to be quite reserved when I first meet people. I'm more of a listener at the start, but once I'm comfortable, I actually talk a lot.
That's so much more human. And notice the phrase, I tend to be. That's incredibly useful because it sounds observant. It's like you've studied yourself and you're reporting back. I tend to overthink simple decisions. I tend to need some time alone after a long day. It's self-aware without being heavy.
Another one is, people often tell me I'm easy to be around, which I hope is true and not just politeness.
And then there's my favorite. I'm the kind of person who. This phrase is magic because it paints a scene. I'm the kind of person who talks to dogs on the street as if they understand me. I'm the kind of person who remembers lyrics to songs from 15 years ago, but forgets where I put my keys 10 minutes ago.
That second one is extremely personal, for me specifically.
And here's something important. You don't have to only share your strengths. Sharing something slightly imperfect about yourself actually makes you more likable, not less.
Because nobody connects with a person who sounds flawless. We connect with people who feel real, people who have small contradictions, small quirks, small admissions.
Exactly. I'm genuinely terrible at relaxing. I'm working on it, but my brain has other plans. That's honest. And honestly, that's what makes personality descriptions feel alive, when they have a little crack of realness in them.
Hobbies. This is where people either light up or go completely blank.
The blank version sounds like this. I like reading. I like walking. I like watching films. Full stop. Silence. The other person nods and immediately thinks about what to have for dinner.
Because there's nothing there to hold on to. No texture, no feeling, no color.
But if you talk about what you love the way you actually feel about it, it transforms the entire conversation.
And this is where a phrase like, I'm really into, becomes useful. I'm really into sounds natural and enthusiastic without being over the top. I'm really into vintage maps sounds completely different from I like maps.
It does. One sounds like a person with a genuine interest. The other sounds like a geography textbook.
So, Sarah, what are you really into? And give me the full version, not the flat version.
I'm really into long walks with podcasts. Not fitness walks, not power walks. Slow, aimless, no destination walks where I just wander and listen to someone telling me a story. It's the closest thing I have to meditation, except I'm moving and there's usually coffee involved at some point.
See? Now I want to know which podcasts, which neighborhood, where's the coffee?
Because I didn't just name the hobby, I gave it a scene. I gave it a feeling. And the formula is actually very simple. Name it, add how it makes you feel, and include one specific detail.
For me, it would be, I've been really into cooking lately, specifically Japanese food. There's something about the precision of it, the way every ingredient has a reason. My kitchen is a disaster afterwards, but for those 40 minutes, everything makes sense.
And that's wonderful because it shows personality, not just activity. The disaster kitchen, the 40 minutes of calm, those are real details. They make you three-dimensional.
You can also use I got into it to explain how a hobby started. I got into running during lockdown and somehow it stuck. Or I got into pottery completely by accident. A friend dragged me to a class and now I have 14 misshapen bowls.
The misshapen bowls are the whole story. That's the detail that makes it memorable.
And don't hold back your enthusiasm. When someone talks about something they genuinely care about, you can hear it. The voice changes, the energy shifts. That's magnetic. People are drawn to it.
Enthusiasm makes your English feel alive. It makes the listener lean in. And it's always more interesting than trying to sound impressive. Honest excitement beats polished performance every time. Okay, goals and dreams. This is the one that makes people feel the most exposed.
Because saying your goals out loud means letting someone see what you want. And immediately your brain starts worrying. What if I don't achieve it? What if they think it's silly? What if I sound too ambitious or not ambitious enough?
And that fear keeps a lot of people quiet. They keep their goals locked inside where it's safe.
But here's the thing. Saying a goal out loud doesn't make you accountable to the world. It makes the goal feel real. It moves it from a thought into a statement. And sometimes the person listening connects you to something you didn't expect. An idea, a contact, an opportunity that only appeared because you said the words.
And you don't have to announce something enormous. You don't have to say, my goal is to retire by 40 and live on a boat. You can be much more grounded about it.
Thank goodness, because that boat thing sounds stressful.
You can say, something I've been working toward is... That sounds honest and active. Something I've been working toward is getting better at public speaking. Something I've been working toward is learning how to code.
Or what I'd really love to do is, which is softer and more personal. What I'd really love to do is write something one day. I don't know what exactly, maybe a children's book, maybe something else, but the pull is there.
And that's a beautiful answer because it's unfinished. It's in progress. And that's okay. Goals don't have to be neat. They can be messy and half-formed and still be worth saying.
Another useful phrase is, I'm at a stage where, like, I'm at a stage where I want to focus less on doing everything and more on doing one thing well.
And the most important thing when talking about goals is to share the reason behind them. Not just the what, but the why. Because the why is where the connection happens.
So not just I want to learn Italian, but I want to learn Italian because my grandmother used to speak it, and I lost that part of my family when she passed. Learning it feels like getting a piece of her back.
And now the conversation has depth. Now the listener understands something real about you. A goal with a reason behind it is infinitely more interesting than a goal standing alone.
And one more thing. You do not need to have it all figured out. It's completely natural to say, I'm still figuring it out, honestly, but I know the direction I want to move in. That's not weakness, that's self-awareness. And self-awareness is one of the most attractive qualities a person can have in conversation.
It is, because pretending you have every answer isn't confidence. Being honest about where you are, calmly and clearly, that's confidence.
This is the balance everyone worries about. How do I talk about myself without sounding like I'm showing off?
And this is where a phrase like come across becomes important. Come across means how other people experience you. Not what you intend to say, but what they actually feel when you speak. I want to come across as capable, not arrogant. She comes across as incredibly grounded.
So the question isn't just, what am I saying? It's, how is this landing?
Exactly. And the line between confidence and arrogance is actually simple. Confident people can talk about what they've done without making the other person feel smaller. Arrogant people turn every conversation into a trophy cabinet.
I'm quite proud of is a phrase that hits that balance perfectly. It's personal, it's grounded, and it invites the listener in. I'm quite proud of the fact that I taught myself to code. It took ages, and I'm still learning, but I built something from nothing.
That feels earned. That feels honest. Compare it to I'm amazing at coding. Very different energy.
And here's a word that captures this beautifully. Grounded. Being grounded means you know who you are. You don't exaggerate, and you don't need approval to feel good about yourself. A grounded person can say, I've done well, without needing to add better than everyone else.
And genuine confidence also includes what you don't know. Being able to say, that's actually not my area, but I find it really interesting, is more confident than pretending you know everything.
Real confidence also means being willing to share something about yourself that feels slightly risky. Not reckless, just honest. Saying your goal out loud. Admitting you're still figuring things out. Asking a question you're not sure about. That willingness to be seen, even when it's uncomfortable, that's what people mean when they say putting yourself out there.
And putting yourself out there doesn't require a stage or a microphone. Sometimes it's just one honest sentence in a quiet conversation. Now, let's give you real sentences you can use. Not theory, not ideas. Actual phrases you can practice out loud and use this week.
So we've talked a lot about how to share who you are, but a great conversation is a two-way street. It's not just about talking. It's about listening and inviting the other person to share too. So we've talked a lot about how to share who you are, but a great conversation is a two-way street. It's not just about talking, it's about listening and inviting the other person to share too.
Okay, so we've covered how to talk about your introduction, background, personality, hobbies, and goals. But there's a huge piece missing. We've been talking about how to talk about yourself, but a good conversation isn't a monologue. Okay, so we've covered how to talk about your introduction, background, personality, hobbies, and goals. But there's a huge piece missing. We've been talking about how to talk about yourself, but a good conversation isn't a monologue.
Okay, so we've covered how to talk about your introduction, background, personality, hobbies, and goals. But there's a huge piece missing. We've been talking about how to talk about yourself, but a good conversation isn't a monologue. Exactly. It's a dialogue, a dance. You share a piece of yourself and then you invite the other person to do the same. That's how you build a real connection. It's not just about what you say, but also about what you ask.
So we've talked a lot about how to share who you are. But a great conversation is a two-way street. It's not just about talking, it's about listening and inviting the other person to share too.
Okay, so we've covered how to talk about your introduction, background, personality, hobbies, and goals. But there's a huge piece missing. We've been talking about how to talk about yourself, but a good conversation isn't a monologue.
So, we've talked a lot about how to share who you are, but a great conversation is a two-way street. It's not just about talking, it's about listening and inviting the other person to share too. Right. One closes the door, the other opens it. And it shows you're genuinely curious. You're not just waiting for your turn to talk again, you're actually listening. For instance, if someone says they're into vintage maps, you could ask, "What's one map you'd love to find?"
That's a great example. It shows you've heard them and you're interested in their world. The best conversations are the ones where you forget you're even having a conversation. You're just connecting person to person. And that starts with being brave enough to share and curious enough to ask. Okay, so we've covered how to talk about your introduction, background, personality, hobbies, and goals. But there's a huge piece missing. We've been talking about how to talk about yourself, but a good conversation isn't a monologue. We'll go through 6 groups: introductions, background, personality, hobbies, goals, and keeping the conversation alive.
That's a perfect summary. It's about balance. The balance between talking and listening, sharing and asking. That's the secret to not just talking about yourself, but to having conversations that genuinely feel alive. It's about making space for the other person's story, not just telling your own. So, we've talked a lot about how to share who you are. But a great conversation is a two-way street. It's not just about talking, it's about listening and inviting the other person to share too. Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm originally from the coast, but I've been moving around for the last few years, which means I'm great at adapting and terrible at keeping friendships with houseplants.
And one of the most powerful tools for this is a simple, open-ended question. Not a question with a yes or no answer, but one that invites a story. Instead of, "Do you like your job?" try, "What's the most interesting thing you're working on right now?" I'm Mike. I'm based in Edinburgh at the moment, which was never part of the plan, but I think the best things rarely are.
I'm a designer by training, but these days I spend more time managing people than making things, which is a whole different kind of creative.
I grew up in a really quiet neighborhood, so living in a big city was quite a shift for me.
I studied psychology at university, which surprises people because I ended up in marketing. But actually, the two are more connected than you'd think.
I've done a bit of everything over the years. Teaching, writing, even some translation work. I think every job taught me something different.
I tend to be quite reflective. I process things slowly, which means I'm not great at arguments, but I'm very good at 2 a.m. realizations.
People often tell me I'm calming to be around, which I think is a polite way of saying I talk slowly.
I'm the kind of person who needs a plan for everything. Even spontaneous things get loosely planned. I know. It's a contradiction.
I'm really into documentary films. Not the dramatic ones, the slow, quiet ones about ordinary people doing extraordinary things in very ordinary places.
I got into journaling a couple of years ago, and it's become this weird anchor in my day. 5 minutes, no rules, just whatever's in my head.
Cooking is kind of my way of unwinding. There's something about chopping vegetables that turns off the noise in my head.
Something I've been working toward is building a better relationship with rest. That sounds strange, but I used to feel guilty about doing nothing.
What I'd really love to do is live abroad for a year. No specific country yet, just a feeling of starting somewhere new.
I'm at a stage where I want to go deeper instead of wider. Fewer things, but done properly.
It's a long story, but the short version is,
honestly, I couldn't narrow it down to one thing. For when someone asks a question with too many answers.
That's actually something I think about a lot. A beautiful way to show the question resonated.
And remember, these aren't scripts. They're starting points. Take the ones that feel like you, reshape them, and make them yours. Welcome to the word tour. We'll take the most useful words and phrases from today, define them clearly, and give you examples so they stay in your memory.
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable. Next. First impression. The initial opinion or feeling someone forms about you in the first moments of meeting you. I always worry about making a good first impression. Or, his first impression was quiet, but the more I talked to him, the more I liked him. A first impression is fast, but it doesn't have to define everything.
First word, vulnerable. When you feel vulnerable, you feel open and exposed, like someone could see the part of you that isn't polished or prepared. Talking about my goals in English makes me feel vulnerable. Or, being honest about your weaknesses takes vulnerability. Vulnerable is not weakness. It's the courage to be seen as you actually are.
Next phrase. Come across. How other people perceive or experience you. Not what you intend, but what they receive. I want to come across as approachable. Or, he comes across as very thoughtful, even in short conversations. Come across is useful because it reminds you that communication has two sides, what you send and what arrives.
Next, background. Your personal history, where you grew up, what you studied, what shaped you professionally and personally. She has a background in architecture, or our backgrounds are very different, but we see the world the same way. Background is not just where you come from, it's everything that made you who you are now.
Next phrase. I'm really into. A natural, enthusiastic way to express strong interest in something. I'm really into architecture. Or, she's really into long-distance running. She does marathons every few months. It's stronger than I like, but less formal than I'm passionate about. The sweet spot.
Next, grounded, stable, calm, connected to who you really are without needing external approval. She's incredibly successful, but she's still very grounded. Or, I try to stay grounded even when things get chaotic. Grounded is the opposite of arrogant. It means your feet are still on the floor no matter how high you've climbed.
Next, warm up too. To gradually become more comfortable, relaxed, or open in a situation or with a person. I'm quiet at first, but I warm up to people quickly. Or, it took me a few weeks to warm up to the new city. Warming up means the real you appears after the initial nervousness fades.
Next, put yourself out there. To express yourself, take a social risk or share something personal, even when it feels uncomfortable. Joining a conversation group was my way of putting myself out there. Or, she really put herself out there by sharing her poetry with the team. It doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes putting yourself out there is just saying one honest sentence when you usually stay quiet.
And finally, self-aware. Knowing your own strengths, weaknesses, patterns, and tendencies with honesty. One thing I've learned is that I'm not great under pressure. I'm more of a slow thinker. Or, she's very self-aware, which makes her easy to work with. Self-aware is the quality that connects everything we've talked about today. When you know yourself, you can share yourself. And when you share yourself honestly, people trust you.
Working toward. Making steady effort and progress in the direction of a goal, step by step. I'm working toward improving my public speaking. Or, he's been working toward his certification for the past 6 months. Working toward sounds active and present. It says you're not just dreaming, you're doing.
So today, remember this. You do not need one perfect answer to tell me about yourself. You need a few honest phrases, a couple of real details, and the willingness to let people see who you actually are. Write one sentence about yourself in the comments. Simple is perfect. We read every single one, and we see you.
Because the version of you that's real Slightly messy, slightly unsure, slightly wonderful is always more interesting than the version that's been polished until all the personality's gone.
Take good care of yourselves, and take good care of your English.
If this episode helped, share it with someone who's learning English. The fastest way to help us make more of these is to help more people find them.
And this is Sarah.
This is Mike.
We'll talk soon.